And it's on.
All right, it's on. Just like...
Donkey Kong?
Just like Donkey Kong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good.
This is The Mud Peddlers, a podcast where two nerdy ceramic artists share the behind the scenes of their worlds of clay. We are your hosts, Lindsey M Dillon.
And I am Donte of Earth Nation.
This week on The Mud Peddlers, we are talking about non-ceramic things that impact ceramic things.
Ooh.
And I think after we have talked a little bit getting ready for this episode about what we kind of mean by that, I realized that we had completely different thoughts about what that meant. But I think that's fun because it'll be an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Oh, also a little later towards the end of the episode, we're going to talk about the whole thing with Kemper.
After this episode, we're going to go to the store right after this and we're going to go buy out all the Kemper. Right, I need to go get clay anyway. Lindsey needs some...
I need some glaze materials and like underglazes and stuff.
Yeah, and so like I am actively going to buy at least like 4 or 5 Kemper tools.
Yeah. I think if you can... leave some for the others if you can manage. But dear listener, if you've been thinking about buying something from Kemper, probably now is the time to do it because they are going out of business.
Yeah.
So it's sad.
It's super sad. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, we'll talk about it, and we'll also talk about some other companies that you can support as they, go over the ceramics business rainbow.
I need to research some other companies because, like, you vote with your money realistically.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, do the other companies... Are they in my interests? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So we gotta, we'll talk about it later, but you
Yeah.
should be doing that with things you buy, realistically.
Yeah. At least as much as you can. Sometimes it takes a lot of digging, but I agree with you. Okay, so back to the topic. I have a list. I have probably too long of a list, and so I'm gonna need some guidance.
Damn it, Lindsey.
Here, I know.
My list has 3 things on it.
Yeah.
Do you want to count how many you have real quick?
I have 1, 2, 3. Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Like 10.
No, it's definitely over 10.
Probably 30 or 40 different things. But also again, we did think about this in kind of different ways. I thought about it in terms of like inspiration and like, what kinds of things that are in the world
that inspire me towards ceramics.
Yes, because I always think about the time when I was in high school, like just when I had started taking ceramics, and I went over to somebody's house and your friend's house, and I was just looking up at the ceiling, and my friends were like, "Lindsey, what are you doing?" And I'm like, the texture, guys. Look at the texture.
Just looking up at the wall?
Yeah. And I'm just like, cause I feel like, and I know this is not just me, because I noticed this from volunteering at the local community college, that a lot of other ceramic students throughout the semester talk about how they start noticing things in the world differently.
Oh, yeah.
So that's like where I was coming from with this question, but you were coming from more of like...
Well, because when you asked the question, or when you kind of gave me the question, you started like, okay, things that are not directly in the ceramic world that affect the ceramic world, either directly or kind of non-directly.
Mm-hmm.
And so my brain went to a very practical place. I started thinking about electronic vehicle cars that use lithium-ion batteries, that now there's an industry that's bigger than the ceramic industry that buys so much lithium that the price has gone up because of supply and demand, which then means the price of my lithium goes up.
But I thought you hated lithium, Donte.
I do. I need to apologize to lithium.
We're going to apologize to lithium?
I'm not apologizing that much. Let's be clear. I'm not apologizing that much to lithium.
Okay.
But it is water soluble, and because of it, I have to usually put on a thicker application of glaze in order for it to work. But I recently developed a banger of a glaze. Lindsey's seen it.
I have.
It's a banger of a glaze.
Great.
And it requires a good amount of lithium.
Yeah.
Right? To like purposely mess up the alkali earth to metal ratio. Mm-hmm. So like now I have a glaze where I actively have to use lithium in order to get this tasty,
Yep.
And so I need to apologize to lithium a little bit. Not all the way. I'm still breaking up with you, lithium, but...
Okay. All right. Well, since I have a lot, and I'm honestly not sure where to start, I'm gonna just slide you...
I can't.
I'm just gonna slide you this list.
I can't read.
Oh, yeah. Well, I write real small.
What in the Yosemite Sam is this? First of all, this is really small handwriting.
I apologize.
Okay, one section says architecture.
Okay.
The other one says high fusion. Fashion.
High fashion.
I told you I can't read.
But it's not like...
This one says disease.
Yes.
Okay. This one says rusty.
Yeah.
This one says... I can get roofing. Underneath roofing it says lizards.
Yeah.
What kind of mental gymnastics did you do to... Hold on. This one says crystals.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
You want to know about crystals?
Are we just blaming our lives on things in the sky? Are we just
No.
astrology people now? Is that what's going on?
Don't get me wrong. I love the historical aspect of crystals and astrology and like the cultural and historical reasons why these things become popular at different times. But
This one says rock climbing gear.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, all right, where do you want me to start? Because there's a lot.
Start at Rusty. Explain Rusty.
Rusty. Okay.
And explain Rusty.
Okay, I'll explain Rusty. So there's two different things that make me look at and be interested in rusted objects.
Okay.
The first thing is that it is really hard to mimic natural texture. Like,
It is,
I think there are a few artists that I've seen. I'm spacing out on my brain right now about the artists that specifically have managed to like mimic that rust texture really well.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think about like a tree or like veins, you know, it's like we all have this picture in our head about what those things are supposed to look like, but then actually trying to mimic that look, you kind of need a reference for that.
It's difficult too.
Yeah. And so I like the look of rust because of the texture that it produces, and it gives an object the sense that it has a life outside of you creating it. Because rust is essentially like an indicator of time passage, right?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I get where you're going.
Yeah.
I get where you're coming from.
Yes. I don't always do this in my work,
Mm-hmm.
but I like the idea of things looking weathered, things looking like, you know, they maybe teleported here from another dimension, or who knows. You know, so I like rust for its ability to suggest the passage of time and suggest use. I also really like it because of color. Let's say you have like a metal sheet
Okay.
with rivets along the borders, right? And let's say that the rivets have started to rust.
Right.
So I love the way that like it kind of slowly looks like it's creeping out into the rest of the blue, and the contrast between like the blue paint and the orange color of the rust is just beautiful.
Absolutely.
And I love that. And so even though a lot of my work doesn't directly copy that, it's kind of a background image in my mind.
No.
So that's why I put rusty.
That makes sense. That makes sense because rust kind of suggests the passage of time and everything that comes with that emotionally. So to a certain degree, when you see a piece of artwork, and whether it's just on a cup or whether it's on like someone sculpted something to actively look like aged metal.
Yeah.
Not only is it high skill, it's also high, and I don't know how to explain this yet because this to me is like a high tier of art world, not just ceramics.
Mm-hmm.
But the way you interpret art at a base level, at least, is by two factors. For me, anyway. This is a larger discussion. I'm just going to touch on it a little bit.
Sure.
Is skill and how the artwork makes you feel, usually emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to kind of look at art a certain way, you need to be at least versed in one of those two fields a little bit. Like, if you're not a very emotionally open person, it's really difficult to look at a piece of artwork and have it impact you emotionally. So you look at it and have it affect you on the level that it might mean to affect you from the artist's point of view.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a third facet, but we won't talk about it. So rust, to me, makes it seem like for someone who might appreciate things or remember things from a long time ago, the passage of time kind of hits that note. Right?
Yeah, that's interesting. I actually hadn't thought about that initially. I was thinking about it purely from the visual element to it and a little bit of the time passaging thing, but the like adding in like, oh, what does it mean to have time passes? Like, that's a whole other thing, and I love that.
Visual aspects, at least to me in the art world, should kind of affect something in you. They're meant to elicit emotion, not specifically emotion, but some type of feeling in you. And that at least to me is like the most base level you can interpret art on.
Yeah.
Because like everybody can. There's no skill required to do that other than being emotionally competent, I guess. I don't know. That's a whole nother field. That's a weird thing to say, I think.
No, I mean, I kind of hear.
You get what I mean, though?
I hear what you're saying.
You can't be like, I never cry, and my father never told me he loved me. Like, you can't. Explain diseases. Make it make sense.
Okay, I will try and make it make sense because it does sound kind of gross.
No, it's definitely gross.
Okay. Most of my references, to be honest, have to either do with texture, color, or proportions.
So you're mostly visual.
Yeah, at least when I'm thinking about, well, because I guess that's what I'm focusing on for this particular episode, because I think our listeners probably by this point know that in terms of the non-physical things that impact my art, it's history, it's folklore, it's geek culture.
Yeah.
Those are all kind of broader categories that I think listeners may already know that like, okay, that like that's the kind of thing. So for diseases specifically, the reason I thought about that is because I have a little bit of like that trypophobia thing where it's like fear of small irregular holes.
Yeah, yeah.
So with diseases, I mostly thought about that when I made this particular cup called the Poisoner Cup, and it became like a series of cups that I made.
I think I remember that.
Yes. I have one sitting on my table across the way because I always want to keep one for like reference to see like, okay, what did I make? Again, the texture of different kinds of flesh and the way it decays is really interesting. Particularly when I developed the series, the Poisoner series, as I was making it, I realized that I was like kind of in my brain combining the textures that have to do with decay with the textures that have to do with like crystals and like mined materials.
Okay.
And I thought that combination of like, oh, what if I made something that kind of looked like it was between a gem and like a pustule? What?
Like a corrupted gem?
Ooh, I like that. Yes, like a corrupted gem or a gem of corrupted flesh. Like, I don't know, just something.
No, the way you said it was wrong. I don't think the way I said it was more right than mine. I mean, yours is definitely wrong.
Yours sounds better for sure because it's focusing on the gem part, but legit, like when you like, and this actually kind of ties into rust because it's both things have to do with decay and the patterns that come with decay.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I admit I didn't really look up specific reference images because it really grosses me out, but it's more like, how do I say? If you have the stomach to be able to look at reference images, I think it can be really helpful because I think we as humans are built to be disgusted by things that are decay and rot. And again, I don't have the science receipts to say that, but this is just kind of based on like, oh, usually the things that we find disgusting are things that are like harmful to us.
There's a reason why death smells bad.
Yeah,
and not good. Instead, like there's a genetic reason not even genetic. There's just a survivalistic reason why like decay and death smell bad to us instead of good.
Yeah. So having something that looks decayed can bring out a physical reaction.
It can give you that.
Yeah, a little bit. That's why I find disease interesting.
You know, just you talking to me about it kind of gives me ideas, and I'm not going to execute them just because I'm not that phase of I'm doing a whole different thing. But like, you know Star Trek?
Yeah.
You know who the Borg are?
Yeah.
It kind of makes me think of like an old Borg. Because they have machine parts and flesh.
Yeah.
And I assume that when they age to a degree, and I know the lore, they have systems to take care of this. But to a degree, I imagine if like you left one of the Borg on a planet that was at least sodium or iron saturated to a degree, right? Or had that in there, and it got in there, it would rust to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And this would in turn show the age of the Borg over time, right? But like when you watch Star Trek, you never see an old Borg.
Yeah.
Or at least you never see like their flesh or their parts start to age. The Star Trek cast didn't like, okay, we gotta have some old ones in there. They were always like shiny and new. And like functional and updated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because of their pods. But like the way you say it immediately makes me think of like mechanical flesh aging by rust.
Yeah. Ooh, that's interesting. That makes me think about H.R. Giger's work. He's for our dear listener and you.
Yeah.
He is the artist who designed the xenomorph in the Alien movies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So his whole aesthetic, it's more clean than the Borg, but it's biomechanical. It's the combination of biological beings with technology and with like mechanical things. So you can see how like one thing can lead to like a bunch of different references.
Absolutely,
and and then that can help you decide like, okay, do you want the aesthetic to be more like viscerally emotionally inducing? Because like for me, the Borg, especially seeing it when I was younger, freaked me the hell out.
Really?
Yeah, they scared me.
My senses kicked in. You know, you watch Scooby-Doo?
Yeah.
And like they go into a haunted house and it's none of their business.
Yeah.
And they're not getting paid for that. And they're just eating food in the fridge of an old haunted house.
Okay.
And you're like, why'd you go in there? Kicks in. I've learned there's people who have like a,
Nah.
Keep it pushing. Like, let's just go.
Yeah.
Let's get away from this. But there's definitely people who are like, let's go in there and let's discover things and get creeped out. I don't have that sense.
Okay.
Okay, so when I see stuff like what you're describing, when I saw the Borg, I was like, nah, I'm just gonna leave.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they don't let you leave. But like, I've never had a, like, I'm disgusted by that emotional reaction. I've always just had a, that's danger, let's leave. I've always had a fight or flight response.
Interesting.
So
I mean, that's definitely an emotional response.
Right, but the emotional response that you have specifically of disgust, but I still want to touch it.
Oh, yeah. No,
I don't have that.
Yeah. No, when I was younger, the Borg scared me and I was like, no, I want to leave.
Okay.
Yeah.
So interior decoration and color is what you have on your list. And that makes, like, complete sense to me.
Okay, tell me why you think that makes sense.
Well, because interior decoration has a large part in the ceramic art world. Like, on the front cover of every interior decoration design is some beige woman, and I'm not saying the color of her, I'm saying her background is usually some form of target beige and white. Mm-hmm. And then in the background, there's usually like that white kind of teardrop looking vase.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about?
See, it's funny because that's actually not where my brain goes with that.
Really?
Yeah. For interior decoration, what draws me to that is, again, like the use of color. Because I think the weakest area that I have, well, one of the weaker areas that I have in my like artistic kind of knowledge is color, and I really find interior decoration helpful in terms of seeing the way that color and texture and space all interact. So if you have, let's say, a glass coffee table with a wicker basket on it, and then behind it is a big wide window without any cross pane markers, the way that our eye sees that versus a fully stocked like apothecary style cabinet.
Right, yeah.
Like,
there's definitely a correlation in between what kind of makes sense on a motif level and like what like you were saying, like a glass table with a wicker basket and a big window behind it doesn't make as much sense to me as like a modern basket and like a glass table with maybe a modern building behind it, because that makes more sense as for like the storyline behind why that's there. But a wicker basket reminds me of like Little House on the Prairie. Right. So that makes less sense just to like the story of the art scene you're painting. Yeah. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah. You know, again, if you're thinking about it from that storytelling part of it, it's like, oh, well, like, why is that basket there? Or just in general, combining things that feel like they are not in the same category, combining those things, I think is interesting because it makes you look at a thing and not immediately be able to categorize it super well. And I think that is one of the things that I find interesting.
On a deeper level, I think it probably leads you to a field of self-reflection, because like you would look at that and you wouldn't just go, that doesn't make sense that that's there. On a deeper level, you'd probably go, why don't I think that belongs there?
Yeah, that, and those, like, I feel like those are the kind of questions that can help you, again, figure out what kind of aesthetic you're interested in. And that's why, that's like, when I look at images of interior decor, I ask myself, and again, to be honest, Pinterest has been a great tool for that. That's it's a lot of what I look at, to be honest, because again, it shows me different things that I may not immediately think of as being like, because I think actually when I first started looking at like interior design stuff, it was purely for I want to decorate my studio. Like, how do I want to decorate my studio? But then the more that I looked at it and started asking myself like, okay, like, why do I like this? Why do I like this? Just asking yourself those questions, I think in general helps you develop a better sense and a more well-rounded sense of what kind of design you like. Yeah. And that can then feed into your ceramics.
Usually what happens for me personally is that I don't really go that deep into it, but I'll notice something that I like, especially if it's new. Yeah. And I find it kind of intriguing, and then I'll try and duplicate it, and then I'll, over the course of a few months, figure out like what I like about it and how I like to represent it in my work. Yeah, but I don't think I've ever sat down and been like, why do I like that? Because then I gotta like unpack some stuff, and that stuff is packed in a box in the back for a reason.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Sounds like that's what therapy is for.
No, I go gym.
You go gym.
Pre-workout, protein shake, squats. Just a little bit though. Okay. Because I already got a dumpy, so. Bless. So like I have to chill, you know.
Mm-hmm. I actually feel like high fashion kind of fits a similar role to me.
Yeah. And I'm saying but like, because I did a class on the Oribe glaze, and if you go back far enough, it almost directly ties in with what I guess you would call the fashion culture of Japan from that time. Like, really? Exactly. Like, if you look up Oribe origins, it'll probably say something about it was meant to mimic. And please, if you're a historian on this, double check me, right? Because I did maybe a week worth of research. I didn't, go any back further than this. But they were talking about how the style at the time was to wear certain green kimonos and clothes that were a green Oribe type texture. And the glaze was named after that type of fashion.
That's fascinating.
At least that's what I read. Right?
Yeah.
You can't just believe it. Everything on the internet is...
Sure.
60% of the stuff on the internet now, I'm pretty sure, is just like AI creating stuff. And then robots reacting and content farming. It's a cycle of...
Gotcha. Yeah, no, actually that's super interesting. And I feel like that, again, shows the way that just visual culture is
100%.
Permeating? Like different fields within the overarching visual culture of an area. Yeah. Like it crosses over like 1,000 different ways. Like I think if anything else, that's like the thesis statement of the way that I'm answering this question is just to show the many different ways that visual culture can impact your creativity and your sense of design and what you're interested in.
Yeah, there's definitely a way that, like, if two splashes in the water create a wave, the new wave those two combine and make is a whole new facet of...
Sure,
you know what I mean? So that's a new wave by that point.
Yeah.
Right? And so I get what you're saying.
I think specifically with high fashion, the designer that I really looked at a lot was Alexander McQueen. I remember coming across a book of his artwork, well, I say artwork, of his designs, his high fashion designs, and being like, it literally feels like each one of these outfits is its own creature.
Yeah.
And just the way that he combined different proportions and different textures just really, really resonated with me. And I've talked to a few other artists who like also have a particular fashion designer that they really looked at. So that's another specific thing.
I'm not very much of a fashion person, but I feel like I need to be.
I mean, I think it can just be another aspect of an art form to look at, like anything else.
I'm gonna ask you. I want to talk about one more thing here.
Okay.
No, so some of them, I'm not talking about the ones that make sense to me.
Okay.
Because I'm looking at this list and I'm like, weapons and armor, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Folklore, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Fancy spoons.
Yeah.
And underneath fancy spoons says door knockers.
Mm-hmm.
And underneath door knockers says rock climbing gear.
Yeah.
Would you like to elaborate whatsoever on these?
Well, rock climbing gear I used when I made
I get really inspired when I go to REI.
REI? I mean,
do you?
Fashion? No, not super well, but no.
Yeah.
I ended up actually looking up rock climbing gear to better fill out the backstory of a creature that I was working on. Okay. So, the horned creature that is on all of my, like, social media icons? Yeah, so that particular creature... I love that thing. I love him, too. He's a great little friend. But the backstory that I had for that creature is that it was a rock climbing creature that essentially would... Like, the whole story is about, like, when, there's, like, a dragon or there's, like, a monster at the top of the mountain and... there's a hero who goes and defeats the monster and comes back down, yay, right? Yeah. But, like, what about all of the, like, heroes, quote unquote, that, like, get killed up there and they don't make it and they don't. So I like the idea that there's this creature that essentially goes around and collects all of the armor and weapons and supplies from these heroes.
A loot monster?
A loot monster.
Oh my God.
That then goes back to the town and then resells it. And and that particular story came, I detailed that a little bit more, like, I think a few years after I created the creature. Yeah. But I knew that I wanted this thing to be like, it's in the mountains, it's like a goat kind of, but not really. Yeah. So when I was trying to figure out, all right, what's this thing going to be wearing? How is it interacting with its environment? I wanted to make something that sort of made sense. Right. And so even though the gear that it has doesn't really, like, it doesn't look like modern rock climbing gear, but it looks kind of like if modern rock climbing gear and, like, steampunk rock climbing gear had a baby. Okay. That's kind of what it was. But it was essentially, I wanted a very specific reference image to be able to support the backstory behind the creature.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So what I'm going to do, because, again, this list is way too long, I'm going to go through and just read off the rest of these.
Yeah, we would go for like an hour if I did all those.
Yeah, no, it's too many. It's too many.
Don't say them like they're normal thoughts.
Okay.
Don't.
All right. So in general, I will say that the non-ceramics things that impact my ceramic things, like how I view my aesthetics and how I develop my design, has to primarily do with the proportions, the colors, and the textures of the things in the world.
That's basic. That's base. That's normal.
Yeah. So some examples of that are, again, architecture. Specific example of that is I love the combination of pale stone with essentially like gold plating on like architecture. So I love the look of like the combined like gold,
like leaf?
shiny,
like gold metal leaf?
like a gold leaf.
Okay.
Yeah, but on specifically on architecture.
Okay.
I like crystals because again, the colors, and especially when you have like not so much like tiny crystals, although those can be interesting like texture wise, but I think when you have a crystal that's like, oh yeah, this is like a rock and then two different crystals that like grew next to each other, the way that looks is interesting to me. And again, the color. I take pictures of leaves and the way that weeds grow on the sidewalk. Again, looking at the contrast between color and texture and the proportions.
You're totally that person, huh?
Yeah, definitely. Coral is interesting again because of the texture. I have a piece that when I was younger, I shouldn't have taken it, but I took a piece of coral from Hawaii and I used that to make several sculptures. I like jewelry. I like looking at diseases, as we mentioned, coffee makers because of the way that it has like a mechanical look, but it's more aesthetically focused.
Coffee makers kind of make sense because like we make coffee pourers.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
Yeah. Medieval heraldry, like specifically for heraldry is like
just making words up.
Like
again.
think about like flags from like Game of Thrones. They have like the flag that's like, oh, this is House Stark, this is House Baratheon or whatever. That's medieval heraldry. So it's like
there's a word for it.
There's a word for it. I had to figure out what that word was, but that is used, I think, quite often in how I design my stamps. That's probably like the most singular way that I design my stamps, is based around the idea of heraldry, right?
Okay.
Rusty, as we said before, interior decorations, body proportions, roofing, lizards, reptiles, and birds, considering like color and texture, plants in the neighborhood, weapons, armor, folklore, door knockers, fancy spoons, and rock climbing gear, as we said before.
This is the list. This is the whole list.
This is the whole list. And then one last thing that is actually a huge impact on my work, but is less has to do with visuals, is songs. So most of the creature sculptures that I've made, and the many that I have yet to make that are trying to claw their way into existence, are inspired by specific songs. So I will listen to a song, have a very specific emotional reaction to it, think about how that emotional reaction could be transferred into a physical movement or a storyline, and then I will develop a creature around that. The combination of the body movements that are inspired by listening to that song and the story that I think of when listening to that song. And so that's kind of a lot. I know that this
wrote that in like 4 minutes too.
Yeah. There is a lot. I know that generally speaking, like, yes, I think you could have easily answered this question in 30 seconds by saying oh yeah, I'm, non-ceramics things that impact my ceramics things. Yeah, nature, the things that humans make. Like, I just wanted to go into more specific detail because I think sometimes, especially when you first get started in ceramics, I think people tend to have things that they naturally tend to look at. Yeah. Like, I think people tend to look at, pressing leaves into clay.
Yeah.
People look at pressing, like, lace and, like, what are those called? Like, little doilies?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like, pressing those into clay. So I wanted to share these to show that there are other things that you can look to to inspire what you make that go beyond what might first come to mind. And I guess the last thing I'll say is that if you have an initial thought about like, oh, for instance, I like the idea of taking a leaf and pressing it into clay. You can ask yourself like, okay, what is it about that is interesting to me? Is it the introduction of something from nature? Or is it like that you like the actual texture itself and you're not as interested in the emotional connections with the leaf being an object from nature? So you can think about an object in terms of its physical characteristics and its cultural characteristics.
Yeah.
And then to take that further, you can go, okay, if I'm interested in the natural element of it, what are some other ways that I could explore my relationship to nature, or what nature means to me, or like what are my associations with it being, with this leaf being from the natural world? And if you're thinking about it from the physical properties, you can go, okay, what is it about this leaf? Is it the proportions? Is it the way that the leaf itself has a kind of symmetry to it or asymmetry? Is it the veins? Okay, like, so I think looking at an object and then asking deeper questions about what you find interesting about it can give you a more in-depth and more potentially unique design aesthetic as you are learning and exploring. And also, it's okay to then just look at an item and go, yeah, I like it. I'm not sure why, but I'm going to make this thing and see where it goes. That's also okay. You don't have to overthink it if you don't want to. I mean, I'm just saying these are options, ways to think about things if you are feeling like you are stuck creatively and you want to push yourself. These are ways that you can do that.
Yeah, they're two different avenues to the same place, in my opinion. No matter which one of those two you just named that you do, like, you're still going to make art to represent something that you find interesting. Yeah. Regardless of whether it's like an emotional deep dive into your own psyche.
Right.
Or if it's just like, I just like rust. And so, I mean, I will say, I've done this before. It's hilarious. It angers people when you're like, I just like it. Some people are like, what? You know, people who are like really artsy fartsy are like, oh, what did you think when you, and you're like, I don't know, man. I just like the color blue.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with people like wanting to know the deeper reason. Because
I didn't say there was, but I am saying people who want that kind of ammo or like emotional, like if you don't give them any type of emotional ammo, they're just like, well, I mean, what about this makes you feel a certain way? And you're like, man, I just like rust. It's not that deep. They get pissed.
Interesting.
They get mad. If somebody's really pushing for it, they get very few people, I'll say that. But they come from a very emotional place. And if you do something they're interested in, and they're like, oh, I love drippy glaze. It just makes me feel something. And you're like, oh yeah, I just put a bunch of glaze at the top. They're like, what do you mean? You're like, yeah, just a bunch of glaze at the top. I only say this. I'm not trying to call anybody. I only say this because I've had this interaction maybe 2 or 3 times.
Interesting.
Where somebody really want something from you, like artistically. And it bothers them a tinge to just go, I was just interested in this thing, so I pushed a leaf into a thing, and that's it. And like, isn't it him trying to imitate nature? And maybe it's something to do with your Nordic roots, and you're like, nope, just pushed a leaf into clay, and I liked it.
Yeah.
They get like, okay, I guess.
I think it's completely okay to like a thing because of its formal qualities, like meaning like its shape, its texture, its it's the way it looks, versus its like theoretical or emotional properties.
Absolutely.
And I think like I hear that it's like
they're both okay.
Yeah, they're both okay, and so it doesn't have to. It's the idea that it has to have an emotional element to it. I think is I disagree with that. Like again, you can like something because of its formal qualities, and it doesn't have to have a deeper emotional meaning beyond like it's interesting to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So let's talk about your thing.
I mean, my list is not as long, and it's far more simplistic than yours.
I mean, I think it's interesting though, because again, like we both had such different associations with that question of like what non-ceramics things impact our ceramics things. So you were thinking about it mostly in terms of...
Well, the first thing that almost everyone thinks about, especially if you've been kind of indoctrinated into the ceramic art world and other art worlds to be fair, is like kitchen utensils. A kitchen store is the second place that you look for ceramic, like blenders. Crappy little blenders saved my life for glaze chemistry. But I think most people who get into glazes or even glaze making in general, or even, mixing things together, don't think of blenders outside of a food facet.
Yeah.
Right? And so when they think of like, I don't sieve my glazes anymore. I blend them.
Really?
I don't sieve any of my glazes anymore. I blend them.
But that's
I don't
a lot.
No, it's not. I don't lose any mineral. Because in the sieve, sometimes little pieces get caught up, and it bugs me that I'm losing like the sneeze amount of silica.
Right.
Or like zinc or like wollastonite are notoriously thicker and clumpier. I don't know why. But sometimes I can't push them through with a soft brush. And so I got to get a specific hard brush. And then, and then I can measure the amount of milliliters of liquid because my little handheld blenders. And to be fair, I get crappy ones because I'm going to use I'm going to dump minerals in them.
Yeah.
I don't get like super high-end food safe ones that can handle a gallon. I don't get all that.
Yeah.
I get ones that handle like 400 mils of liquid.
Do you then like, do you just mix it up into a particularly thick slurry and then add water to that? Or like, because like I'm thinking like when I make glazes, I make them in 5-gallon buckets, and there's way too much mineral material in and of itself to fit into a blender.
I only make small batches right now.
Oh.
So I think you're thinking about like a 5-gallon amount.
Yes.
If I have to make a 5-gallon amount, which I'm trying to stay away from because then you have floating blue for like 3 years.
Oh.
And then you're like, well, I want to expand my horizons outside. Like, I'm past blue now, you know?
Gotcha.
Not that I hate blue, I'm just past
blue.
I'm just past
blue
floating
is
blue.
so plebeian.
It is. I'm trying to be nice about it. But like,
that's funny.
Blue in general is cool, but I've been using it for so long and it sells so well that I feel like I'm pinholed into like making blue things.
Gotcha. So you're wanting to like
I want to expand as well. And so now I make 100 or 200 gram batches, which is what, maybe like a third of a pint, a fourth of a pint, right? And then I use that glaze, and then I make another one that I'm interested in. And as long as I've tested it and I prove that it works in my kiln at my temperatures, then I get to have a variety of things, and I can test them, you know. Yeah. I get to have variety in my life instead of making, all right, I got these 20 blue porcelain cups that are definitely going to sell because blah, 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 blah. Anyway. So I don't make 5-gallon batches that much anymore. But for like almost all my glaze tests, I put the minerals together, 100 gram batch plus the colorant, so it's a little over 100 usually. And then I put them in like a little food safe, like to-go container. You can buy 100 of them for $20 off like Amazon.
Or you can save buon talenti ice cream containers.
Or you can eat a pint of ice cream.
You can just, you know, I mean, it's for work.
It's for work, yeah. And I put the minerals in there. And that's another thing, because those are for kitchen use, technically, those little containers I'm talking about. And then I mix up the minerals. And then I add a certain percentage of water to them. Usually it's 90 to 120 milliliters, depending on how much gravity and what the glaze I want, what I'm testing, XYZ. I put them all in the blender. And I just push go. Okay. Yeah, and it's airtight, like waterproof blender as long as you seal up the little battery charger at the bottom. Yeah. It's like the little but like no one who makes glazes at first, at least for me, for the first like 3 years, I was like, I gotta sieve all these. And the 60 sieve versus the 80 sieve versus the 100 sieve, they all matter. Right. Not really. Not really. Like, not unless you're trying to make a glaze minerally thick on purpose, like chunky on purpose. That's such a good idea, though, putting them in a blender. I literally did not think of that. I thought about it maybe 3-4 years ago, and I've never gone back. Excellent. Yeah. All right, so what's another thing? Okay. Spray bottles. Spray bottles, okay. Spray bottles are crazy. Okay. So spray bottles to me, that feels very like, yes, of course, like we all learned, spray down your pieces before you whatever. Right, but spray bottles weren't like meant for the ceramic world specifically. They're just something we use that is from another industry. Yeah, if I was talking about like, they're from another industry, realistically. Okay. We just happen to use them because they're a good way to spread water on a thing where we are in a craft that we need water. Yes. That's pretty much it. That makes me think of like forks. Like, I know a lot of sculptors. Yeah. I'm actually not a big fork person, like, for scoring and slipping, because I like having I like having a smaller surface area, but if I'm making a big sculpture, it's like, forks are a thing. I still use the pin tool. Oh, yeah. Just because I, like you're saying, like, I can control the surface area of where I put my scratch marks. Because if my handle's attaching to a scratch mark that is a thick fork width, right, then you can see the scratch marks outside the bounds of where I attach the handle. Yeah. And like, you know. So I think to people like me and you, we're like, I noticed that. You know, you can kind of see it. But those are like a couple of things that are kitchen store sort of related. Absolutely. Yeah. Like not even, or like sweeping compound is another thing that I use sometimes. Sweeping compound? Sweeping compound is a construction industry type beat where like you put it on the ground and it's made of some kind of material where it attracts dust and silica. So what I do sometimes if I don't have the wherewithal to like spray down with the concrete cleaner in my garage and my driveway. Because that's kind of how I clean the floor. I didn't even know that there was a concrete cleaner. Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, you can definitely get it, yeah. You can put sweeping compound down, and people are like, don't sweep in your studio. Yeah. You could sweep, just don't kick up the dust. Like, don't be sweeping like a cartoon character, like... Yeah, don't, like, sweep a little bit, put it in the dustpan, but sweeping compound helps attract all the dust and silica while it's on the ground. That's super useful. It's mainly used by construction workers because the other class of people that are affected by silicosis, other than potters, even to a way greater extent, are construction workers. Man. Especially the indoor ones. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yep. They have higher, and you have to check me on the stats, but they have higher rates of silicosis than we do. Wow. Yeah. And the sweeping compound really helps with that, especially if they have to clean up an area where they've been working with, like, drills and sawdust and things of that nature. Things in the air. Yeah. I think woodworkers as well have the same problem. That makes sense. But another industry wasn't meant for pottery. Definitely helps. What else you got? Okay, hold on. I got a big one here. Okay. It's not true. It's very average sized. One that is directly tied in with us, but I know it's always on the forefront of our minds,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't really consider it a part of ceramics, is delivery. USPS prices go up. Prices of your pieces go up. Certain kind of box that fits your work perfectly is not in stock anymore. You're paying more money for a little bit of a bigger box. The prices of your boxes, right? And so all these shipping industries and all these like imagine if the cardboard industry went down tomorrow.
Oh my God.
Right? So you have to some extent, and this is just a further thought, pay attention to industries that affect us that aren't directly meant for us.
Yeah.
Another one, like I said earlier, was the lithium.
Yeah, that to me was like the biggest like light bulb when you first mentioned that. I mean, I know it's been a while since you like first kind of were talking about that, but yeah, the idea that the increase in electronic vehicles makes lithium harder to get.
Absolutely.
Is just like, oh dang.
Yeah.
Like
Cobalt, lithium.
Yeah.
Zinc to a degree.
Yeah.
Right? And anytime we have an innovation in society where a certain element or mineral from like a certain element is needed from a mineral that you can get it in high volumes, like you're gonna pay more for it. EVs are becoming more popular, especially within the last 5, maybe 7 years.
Yeah.
And so the price of lithium do be going up.
Yeah.
Right? And it's gonna keep going up as long as, I'm not saying don't buy an EV in the interest of making,
yeah.
like
No,
just pay for your lithium.
Yeah.
Just pay for it. But definitely those prices go up as a direct cause and effect of those things.
Yeah.
Right? And not only that, like just shipping in general, it's insane, right?
Yeah.
Those last two industries you can almost combine. You can combine the shipping industry if things cut, like if gas goes up. You know what I mean? Right? Because USPS pays for gas. Not USPS specifically, just any.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not trying to call out like USPS. I'm saying however you ship your stuff.
Yeah.
Right? It does come into the cost of your ceramics. But these are all things that like are not 100% ceramics that directly affect us.
Yeah.
Not only as artists, but
it's almost as though we live in an interconnected world.
It's almost as though every section of art isn't isn't a closed off
closed
sphere.
system.
Yeah, isn't a closed system. Yeah. Like we're not a Dyson sphere. Like we don't run off of our own. Like we create and run off of our own culture, and no other comes in. Like it doesn't happen like that. Other things affect us. It's just that people don't think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I really appreciate recognizing that it's all about interconnectedness. Like I'm thinking about cultural and like conceptual interconnectedness.
Yeah.
And you're thinking about like practical interconnectedness.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's just because I'm becoming more like every single step I take.
Every move you make.
Damn it! Damn it, Lindsey!
Watching you.
Oh, I was just gonna say that.
I took it.
Oh my God.
Too slow.
Every time I get a little bit further in what I think is another step in my knowledge of the ceramic art world or what I'm doing specifically, I realize there's a whole other world, right? And I don't think I've ever reached the top of expression of any culture. Like, I don't think I've ever reached a space in glaze chemistry making where, like, Matt Katz has said something or Rose Katz said something, and I've just been like, oh yeah, I knew that. Like,
oh, right.
Right? Well, to be fair, there's, like, some of the stuff they say. But, like, every now and then, I listen to, like, 1 in every 6 of their episodes. I'm like, oh yeah, I never even thought about that.
And this is For Flux's Sake.
Yeah, that's the For Flux's Sake podcast,
yes,
right?
Which, dear listeners, if you have not already discovered that podcast, give it a listen because it is fantastic, short, concise episodes talking about a lot of the technical side of ceramics that we maybe brush the surface of, but they go into much deeper detail and they have the credentials to back up what they're saying.
Glaze chemistry specifically. Actually, I took all of my glaze chemistry classes from the Ceramic Material Workshop, in which Matt and Rose Katz are the people who made, who are the ones who essentially are the two hosts of the For Flux's Sake podcast. Like, I took my classes from them. Right? So every time you go to my Glazy profile and you're like, wow, they look so good, it's only because of them.
Yay!
I took their classes.
Yay!
We're about to go to the mineral company right now, and so it's crazy to think about, like, you know, every time there's a new mineral on the block, it, like, you have to think about the byproduct. Because just, and this is just a small rant, right? It's not like there's an industry, or at least from what I've seen, that makes minerals specifically for pottery. It's not like they're just like, oh yeah, we're digging up all these minerals, and these minerals can only be used for ceramic artwork. Yeah. Usually they dig up the minerals, other industries use them, and we're kind of getting them, not secondhand, but like...
We're not the primary reason for them being mined.
Absolutely. And that's like lithium, cobalt, iron. Those are all the color and metals, things of that nature. Like,
because there's a lot of ceramics used in other industries like dentistry, like mechanics, like, you know, brakes are often. I think I remember learning about that. Brakes are off, like in
space
cars.
Shuttle parts.
Space shuttle parts, yeah.
Are fired to like a ridiculous cone that I can't even think of because they need to be refractory enough to like not only absorb but reflect heat.
Yeah.
Right? And like there's parts in your car that are in fact made of ceramic. But like keep in mind, I'm sure there's a certain ceramic part in your car that needs the same materials that EPK has, you know? Like, stuff like that, you know what I mean? Has a certain ratio of alumina and silica or whatever, you know? Probably not silica, but yeah, you get my point.
Yeah, I hear you.
But, you know, just keep those things in mind along with Lindsey's gargantuan list.
Gargantuan. It's so big. Oh my god. Anyway, before we go farther down that path, all right, do we want to talk briefly about Kemper? Or are we done?
Well, we should talk about Kemper. Let's talk about Kemper. So if you're not aware, Kemper, the industry that makes the hype, I don't want to say majority. The majority of the ones that I like a lot, right? Tools, especially the trimming, carving, things of that nature, tools, sculpting tools, evidently went out of business.
That's crazy.
From what I've been told, they sold the building where they make the Kemper tools to another person, and they were like, we're just not going to make those tools anymore, right? And then they tried to rent a space in the building they sold to the person, and the rent was too high, and so they're like, well, we can't stay here anymore. And as far as I know, ceramics isn't like there's not like multiple Kempers in the world, right? I think there was just one place that made Kempers.
Okay.
And so that's
like one facility, one building, where all the tools were being produced.
I think that's because otherwise you would just still have them. You would have other. So that's just my brain going, that makes sense. I don't know that for sure, but the long and the short of it is that Kemper is going out of business.
Sad.
Which is super sad because whenever you buy those beginning pottery toolkits, like they're Kemper.
Yeah.
Made in the USA Kemper.
Yeah.
You know?
Unless they're the cheaper ones, because I know there is like I think
ones,
we've talked about that on the favorite tools episode. I can't remember which one, but we talked about, or you specifically brought up, there's the 2 beginner packets.
There's a big imported one and the made in the USA one.
Yeah.
And the made in the USA one's a little more expensive, but it has better materials. And they're made by Kemper.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see what companies step in to fill that.
I think Mud Tools is going to at least for the quality stuff, probably Mud Tools is going to have to start making things because they already have that multi-trim tool. That does like half the jobs of the other Kemper tools.
What's the other one that's like, is it Dirty Girls Pottery?
There's Dirty Girls, there's Xiem or Xiem.
Xiem?
Yeah, yes. Tools. Mud Tools is to me it's a high brand name. To me it's like Mud Tools is definitely like up there. I've bought that multi-trim tool from them like 4 or 5 times in my lifetime. Just because it does all the things the other tools that I like do. Yeah. Including the pear trim tool and that little sculptor one, and it can chatter, and it's not an advertisement for Mud Tools. I'm just saying that with that giant spot that Kemper took up, now that they're going, or at least going to be gone, other stores are probably going to come in and fill the space of some of the tools they made, at least I think if they were smart enough to be like, all right, we got to start making stuff.
Right.
This is my only ask.
Okay.
Don't be buying them Temu tools, man.
Temu?
Don't be buying.
Don't
be buying. Just buy. Support the ceramic industry. I know it's like $2-3 for a whole pack of the cheap tools. Just get them from the original websites.
Yeah.
If you don't have the money, I'm not pushing. I'm not trying to say like you're bad if you don't. Like your financial business is yours.
But it's like buying a bookstore, or it's like buying a book from a bookstore as opposed to Amazon.
Yeah, like support the person, or at least the people that are
the smaller businesses.
The smaller businesses that aren't, and on another facet, I see like Amazon will replicate tools from pottery making industries, and I get them. I've bought a Mud Tools tool from Amazon before, and it came and it was a lesser quality. It didn't cut as well. It felt like plastic.
Yeah. I think also, I feel like I actually remember a while ago there was an issue where I can't remember what company it was. It may have been Mud Tools, but legally speaking, I can't say which one, but there was a company that brought up that Amazon or
I remember that.
Yeah, it was like a thing where it was like, hey, they're taking our designs and our tools and remaking them of a lesser quality. Like, don't buy those.
For cheaper, yeah.
Yeah.
But if you don't know any better, you go on Amazon, you look up the tool, or you just put it in Google, and Amazon, of course, is at the top of the list.
Yeah.
And then you just buy it from there thinking it's the same quality. Try really hard to go to the direct website of where they sell the tools for the name brand of the tools. If
Yeah.
you want to buy a Mud Tools tool, go to Mud Tools. If you want to buy a Xiem tool, they have a website.
Yeah, I'll list them in the show notes as well. If you've never been to those websites or you don't want to Google it, there will be a link in the show notes.
Yeah.
Another thing I'll say too is that there are sometimes specific ceramic artists who will also make tools, like
Right.
oh my goodness, Hand and Fire.
Right.
The artist behind that it's not even a company because it's literally just like
person.
this one person
Yeah.
and then her partner. But they actually make small batches of ceramic tools as well. So like if you want to go even smaller, you know, there are individual artists who will sometimes sell specific tools as well. And, you know, again, I can't speak to their quality necessarily because I've never purchased one, but that's another thing to keep in mind is that just in general, you know, again, like you mentioned earlier, like we vote with our money, and the best that, like, I think if you can do what you can to support as local a business as possible, as small a business as possible, then I think that's a good thing.
The crazy thing is that Amazon has such good shipping prices because, like, and this isn't a sponsorship for Amazon or anything. It's when I go to the original website of a place that I want to buy the tools from, usually their prices are a tiny bit higher. But what Amazon is doing is they're producing the item at a lower cost or buying the item from the distributor and then giving it to you at a lower shipping price. And so the prices seem lower because they can pump it out so fast. They have a huge team. But like if I have to spend $2 more of shipping to buy it from Mud Tools and support Mud Tools because I want them to stay around, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
I agree.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like people are like, you're trying to shame me for I only got so much money. Look,
No, I mean,
you do what you can do.
Yeah.
But I want to make it clear, like, I'm buying my tools from the direct. I'm not buying Amazon pottery tools. I go to the store on my off time, or I get it directly from the website because I want to support the ceramic art world in that fashion.
Yeah.
Right.
Speaking of which, do you want to go to
yeah, we need to go to
want to get
Imco.
Imco?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm gonna go to the camper tools.
Okay. All right. Bye.
I got the swampiest bud right now.
Oh no. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of The Mud Peddlers. We would love to hear from you, so if you want to share your thoughts about the episodes or just see what Donte and I are working on in our studios, come say hi. You can find links to my social media at lindseymdillon.com. That's LINDSEY, M as in monster, DILLON.com.
And you can visit my pottery shop or see what I'm working on at earthnationceramics.com. And you can find me all over social media at Earth Nation Ceramics. It's spelled exactly how you think it's spelled.
And if you want to support the show, hear some bonus episodes, and see some behind the scenes of my work, you can support me and the show at patreon.com/Lindsey M Dillon. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.